Good morning, welcome back to Wild Bird Farm. I'm Tara. I garden here in Zone 5 in central Iowa. I thought I would take advantage of this beautiful early morning and we would walk around the farm and see what's blooming. But more than that, it is mid-June, and June is when I sometimes have a little gap in my flower season. So I want to highlight some things that I've done over the years that's allowing me to make lots of bouquets in June, and then also some gaps that I'm still seeing that I want to correct next year. Okay, let's start off in the tunnels. This is a small one. It's 12 feet wide by about 24 long. This is the 5th growing season I've used this tunnel. I put this tunnel up mostly for sweet peas because I fell in love with the thought of them, and we will look at them in just a minute because they're good this year. The biggest things I have been pulling out of here is our direct sown Orlea, our direct sown Saponaria, our direct sown cress, and our direct sown Nigella is really starting to push some blooms. Now you'll see behind me, I have this patch of sunflowers. I have a little one behind me and then one way in the back. I would say I probably have maybe 50 or 60 sunflowers in here total. My hope for these, I actually thought they'd be blooming by now. We're just almost to mid-June. This is the 13th when I'm videoing this. I thought they would be pushing blooms by now and really help me fill that gap between peony season until we get into like the zinnias and the warm annuals. I thought these tunnel sunflowers would do that for me. I think they still will, but they have at least a week or two before we're going to see blooms. None of them look really even close to cracking open. So next year, one thing I might do is I might plant these a little earlier. I think this was the very first part of April. So 60 days for sunflowers, but being that it's cool out, you have to add some days. I thought we would be about there. I would say we have a couple weeks yet. One other thing I'll show you, I started a bunch of scented stock. We had a mishap with the heater in the shop and I lost most of it. So I direct sowed some corn cockle. That is blooming. I've been picking that out of here just really about a week, picking that for about a week. And then the sweet peas, I've been harvesting that like crazy, and we'll look at it and it doesn't look like I've touched it. The key with sweet peas is to harvest them often so they keep pushing blooms. They're really what got me into flower farming. I just love them. I love the scent. I get annoyed that the stems aren't really long enough for me to use in wrapped bouquets. So this year you'll see I have about a 6-foot wide section on 2 sides of some T-posts, and those are just for me to enjoy. So let's get off the tripod and we'll take a closer look. Now the other thing I'll say is some of these seeds blew around a little bit in here, and it's made it really hard for me to weed. So right now I'm just stepping on some weeds. My thought is once the Orlea and the Nigella goes over and the sweet peas, I'm going to harvest seeds from all 3 of those. And then I'm probably going to come through with a weed whacker and whack everything in here down very, very short. And then I'm going to tarp it because like all that is weeds. Now this is cress that I don't like to use that kind of cress. It's a weed here. But to allow everything to go to seed and for me to finish harvesting it, like right here, there's a ton of Nigella that I'm going to be able to harvest here next week. So it's probably going to be a month before I get seeds collected. Actually, it's going to be at least a month because I want sweet pea seeds as well for me to tarp this because it, along with other parts of the farm, are very overrun with weeds this year. Here's the sweet peas. They smell absolutely divine. I would say if you have a protected place, if your backyard is protected somewhere where it's at least part sun, if you're in a warm climate, I think you can get by with some shade. Most years I have put shade cloth over this hoop. We didn't this year, which makes me think these are probably going to fade faster than normal because of that, but they're doing okay so far. We've been in the 90s this week. Look at this. You see that seed? So this is why you want to pick them often, because once they start doing a bunch of seeds, you're not going to get any more flowers. So this must have been a flower that I missed early on. We're going to pick that one off. But definitely going to take seeds from this. From what I've read, and I've harvested sweet pea seeds before, they don't self-pollinate around too much, so you're not going to get a lot of crosses from a bed like this. You'll mostly get the same varieties. So let's go back here. I have harvested over half of the stock that I did have, but there's just a few stems left. These I'm waiting. So I could harvest like this one, for example, at this stage, but since I see a lot of buds on top, I'm going to let it keep going. This one's a little farther along, but most of these need a few more days, or they're singles. The singles come and go pretty quick, so I don't always catch those. But I had some nice stock this year. I had anticipated having gobs of stock, so I am a little bit disappointed because it just smells so wonderful. Right here was where we had cress and saponaria, and I picked this really hard. Now these are raspberry canes. This whole bed used to be full of raspberries, and since they mature when the Japanese beetles come, we didn't have raspberries for 3 years when we decided to convert this to flowers. But raspberry canes are really hard to get rid of. So I will cut these back and then tarp this area. Now we did direct sow some larkspur as well. This is later than I anticipated that it would be. But we'll have some nice stems of that, it looks like. And then I'll swing you around so you can see the corn cockle, just the white variety in here this year. And there's a lot of this that I can harvest as well. Now I will harvest it pretty much at every stage. More fully open, like this one is the only one I didn't harvest a couple nights ago because it had some damage. But these that are just opening, you can harvest them at that stage like this as well. Since we're walking by the larger hoop house, now this hoop house is 20 by 40. We just put it up last fall, so this is my first growing season in here. I will just mention what's going on in here because there's not much color right now. So let's start on the 140-foot section is all snapdragons. I came through last weekend with my hedge trimmer and I cut them all back. They had all bloomed out. I had harvested a lot off of them, and they were just blown too far open. I pulled the netting off. I took my hedge trimmer and I cut them very low to the ground. I watered them well, and then I fertilized them. And what I'm hoping, although we had a very, very hot 90-degree week, but if we get a little bit cooler temps, what I'm hoping is that they're going to give me a second flush here, end of June, early July. And then I'm hopefully just going to have them kind of live. See, the cat came down. Have them live, probably not bloom a lot through the summer because it's going to get hot in the tunnel. But then I'm hoping for a third flush in September or October. I don't know how this is going to work timing wise. I don't know if the stems are going to be too wimpy, but we're going to try it. Now the middle section of this tunnel had ranunculus, and I did a video recently on how I dug those up and am drying those for storage. Let's see what else is in here. Foxglove have blown over. I will say I didn't use, I don't want to step on the cat. I didn't use as much foxglove in bouquets as I thought I would. I sold some in bulk buckets to florists, but a lot of the bouquets that I did when it was blooming, when it was at its peak, were the little dance studio bouquets, and I knew I didn't want to put it in kid bouquets because if you don't know, foxglove is poisonous to animals as well as humans. Um, I don't know if I'll grow that much of it again. I had brought in a plug tray, so I probably had 128 plugs, maybe, I'm guessing, on the plug tray. There was a lot of stems that I didn't use. So right now, I'm not sure if it's going to perennialize here. It wasn't a true biennial. This was the kind that bloomed the first year. Hi, Tiger. Um, no, you get down, please. So I'm not sure what's going to happen. I know that it'll reseed itself. So right now, I'm letting it form seeds. I'm going to let the seeds drop because I just don't really have a plan for that space right now. And we're going to see if it self-sows or maybe if some of those plants live through the summer, and see if I can just get a smaller patch for next year. Don't know if that'll work, but that's the plan. And then I will take you just inside the door because I have some eucalyptus and mums that need to go in the ground, and I'm planning to do a video on the heirloom mums, but I'll show you how they're looking. Here's a row of snaps so you can kind of see visually how much I chop those down. I did forget to talk, hi Tiger, I did forget to talk about the pansies. I had cut those back hard, and then I read someone say that they perennialize a bed by letting seeds drop. So then I thought, well, maybe I need to let these flower and go to seed. So that's kind of what I'm doing back there. But similar with those, I didn't use the blooms that much this spring. I definitely wouldn't buy plugs again, kind of like with the foxglove. If they go to seed and they self-sow, I'm going to leave a little patch, but probably not dedicate a ton of space for them. Here are the heirloom mums, which I bought from 3 Porch Farms via Farmer Bailey. And they're looking good. I got them late. I think most people would have gotten them earlier and taken cuttings to propagate them. I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure if I can do that this late in the season. I'm going to have to dig them in the fall, so I don't necessarily need to propagate plants to save. If I could get them to bloom, though, then I would propagate. I need to look a little bit more into that. And again, I'm going to get those planted out very soon. There's some ranunculus drying. Now I had a fourth one, and it had dried out so much so quickly I took it into the garage because it's getting really hot in here with the 90-degree days. All of these are about completely dried out, so I'm going to be cutting the dried stems off and storing them probably this weekend yet. Now I have, I believe, 8 eucalyptus total. These I started from seed. I've started a lot more in the past, but my goal for these is to get them to overwinter because I'm finding annual eucalyptus just isn't worth the work for me. So if I have to start seeds in January each year just to get one good harvest, but baby them from January until September, just not worth it for me. I do have 2 larger over here, and I put these in larger containers. I'm going to try to keep these in the containers and overwinter them in the container and see how that goes. Now these were a little bit bigger to begin with, but you can tell they're definitely bigger plants than these in the gallon size. But I'm planning to get these in the ground in the center of the hoop house here this weekend as well. Okay, we are at the top of the perennial hill now. My plan is just to very quickly show you how things are doing and mostly point out things that are in bloom or about to bloom. I'm gonna warn you again, it has been a weed year, so there's a lot of weeds out here in the perennial rows. I'm doing pretty good on the annual field, but I definitely need to dedicate some time to come through here and clean up. So ignore the weeds, let's look at the pretty flowers. Okay, I think we'll run top to bottom down each side. Hopefully the dogs don't start barking on us. All right, here's just some self-sewn bachelor's buttons, but we have sedum here looking really good. I didn't end up doing the Chelsea chop on these just because there's some smaller ones down here anyway on their own, so I'm hoping I have some variety in harvest time just sort of naturally this year. This is an entire row of Rudbeckia. This is the Irish eyes that we can see blooming, and then I think it's Sahara down here, a little bit shorter, but I did see some blooms. Now, honestly, I'll say I didn't think I loved Rudbeckia, but to have something I could fall plant and hopefully bloom this time of year and fill the gap, I gave it a try again. I still don't love it. I don't really consider these a focal flower. They're gonna do in a pinch, but I just don't find them wonderful. They're cute. I have the native black-eyed Susan in the pollinator strip and in my landscape beds, and I think these just look too similar to that for me. I also thought this was going to be the variety that had the darker ring in the center, but that must be a different variety. And then, like I said, I believe this is Sahara. No blooms yet. These are gonna bloom shorter, it looks like. So my plan for this, I'm gonna harvest, I'm gonna use it. Rudbeckia is often a perennial here. The black-eyed Susan definitely is the native variety. I'd read that this might not even overwinter. Well, it obviously did. So we're gonna see if it comes back next year. Not something I'm totally in love with. This was a direct seeded row that did very poorly. You see Orlea down here, and then there's a little bit of Bupleurum that I'm letting go, but really this row needs to be tarped pretty quickly, and I'll probably put late season something in here, amaranth maybe, or marigolds, something later on in the season. This is St. John's wort that did not come back, and I'm really disappointed. I brought in some pretty expensive plugs last year, and I think this is only the equivalent of 2 plants that came back. There's a lot of self-sown Bupleurum in here. That's kind of why I'm leaving this a mess, but eventually that'll be tarped. And then we have Baptisia, new that I brought in, and then last year, but you can see I really have to weed that. 2 rows of yarrow coming up. This is just starting to bloom. And again, this yucky perennial grass in certain areas has really taken over. I was thinking that I only needed 1 row of this, but I didn't get, I think I would take out this older row that's more grassy. I didn't get it tarped. So we're going to use this and enjoy it this year. I may end up tarping both. I think this year, I think this row is salvageable. There's not as much grass, but definitely need to do something about this upcoming row. And then we have bachelor's buttons and some plugs of feverfew that I brought in. But again, a lot of this grass, and you can see it's about to go to seed. So we are going to have a mess on our hands that I'm going to have to get cleaned up. Yarrow really self-sows. You can see it jumping rows a bit. But this, I believe, is a Venmo single. I've picked some of this, but lots more to pick through the grass, of course. But this is real life, so I decided to show it. I will say I've never had this many weeds anywhere ever. Wait till you see the lupin row. I've just decided I need to give myself a little bit of a break this year. The lupin is pretty much gone over. You'll see most of these going to seed. This is a feverfew row. So we've got some up here that didn't make it, but we've got quite a bit we can pick back here. And this is the snow puff or something like that. I'll write the name on the screen. I've picked some of this too. And then I had lilies out here way back in the day, and I've just left them. Looks like they're gonna do pretty well this year. Have a whole row of Baptisia here that's already bloomed and putting on seeds. going back to the weeds. I've always really tackled the weeds, and this year I just didn't. This is another row of feverfew. This just got planted out this spring. And then I had lupin down here. Some of it died off, and we're getting a few Queen Anne's lace popping in, which I don't love because that really spreads really quickly. Let's see, but there is some lupin in here. We just need to get it weeded. And then I'll be cleaning out this half of the bed this weekend for more zinnias. But then I have the first succession, I think this was about close to 200, 150 down here. Planted them pretty close. I have not snipped them back yet to get them bushier. I really want the blooms, so I think I might not. I don't know, that's kind of risky. I don't always get a great first stem doing that. It's not always super long. I usually kind of snip out that leader stem so it can get bushier, but we'll see. And then the last two rows, this is the delphinium that I moved last year. So this is kind of an off year for it. It's really going to bulk up next year. But I have probably picked a dozen stems. And there's probably half a dozen more out here about ready to be picked. I added a few more, I think 8 more plants. I was disappointed though, in another area I brought in a bunch of pink delphinium plugs and none of them made it. But I'll bring in a few more plugs to finish out this row. I had these spread out too far out in the annual field, and when we started putting in the boxes, that's when I moved them early last spring. So I did lose a decent amount of plants, but I think when this fills in, that'll be enough for me. And then this is really the biggest row that's a mess. So I have some Veronica in here. Some of it's died out. We have a lot of Queen Anne's lace that is trying to take over the row. And then down here I had some perennial phlox, and I've not had good luck with it. I mean, it's still alive, and it's never been weedy until this year. So it had a clean bed last year. It just gets, I don't know what it gets, rust or something here. It doesn't do real well. I don't really use it for bouquets. So eventually I think I will put some of this in my landscape and then switch this bed over to something more productive. Maybe even do a second row of delphinium, or maybe Veronica, although the Veronica barely gets tall enough for me, so I need to look closer at my varieties. But there is phlox in here, definitely needs to get weeded. I did pull the garden hose out last night to water the zinnias in the framed in bed. That bed, even though it's just barely raised, dries out quite quickly. We have a hot spell. Last space we'll look at today is our annual boxes out here in the annual field. Tiger is still with me. My coffee is cold, so we'll make this quick. All right, right off the bat, this first garden box is also the best looking one. We have some straw flower budded up. Haven't harvested any yet. They're not quite ready. Sorry. But they are close. I'm hoping it's a good year for straw flower. If it's not, I might be done growing it in mass because last year was a horrible year. I think it got leaf hopper. And I barely harvested any, but we have a little bit of a succession going. So some here that's bloomed up, some that's quite small. Then on the other half of this 25-foot bed is annual scabiosa. Again, some are getting quite tall, the first succession, but then some is quite a bit shorter. And we'll just run through real quickly what is in here. My goodness, this cat. I have put basil throughout because we're trying to use that as a pest deterrent, as well as I'll put it in bouquets. But the majority of this row is status, and some of that down at the end is starting to push some blooms. So excited for that. I have this area tarped off. I will be taking that off this weekend and adding in some more seedlings of marigolds that I started. That's marigolds there, the white type. We have some self-sown things. This whole row was self-sown. Actually, both of these rows didn't do real well. This is some corn cockle here. And then some baby's breath. We did the pink and the white. Looks like the white's doing better. We have some cosmos in here. I have weeded this several times and it is weedy again. Needs another run through. I kind of left this because once I harvest these one and done self-sown things, or excuse me, direct sown things, I'm going to tarp this whole area, this half, and then we'll probably end up putting marigolds this full stretch. But this way I'll have a couple successions. Then we get into the celosia. There's gladiola down here. I don't grow a lot of those, but those look really good so far this year. We've been getting consistent rain, which they really like to be watered quite a bit. Some basil here again, but then probably a half a row of celosia. I left this with a little bit more space for walking through, and then we have more celosia, and then I did self-sown celosia down here, which there are weeds in there. Let me just run down there, but you can easily tell where the seeds are, so I'm just going to come through and hoe this. And there's the cat. You can see the you can see the celosia. I just really need to get through here and weed it. The bed behind me is the dahlia bed. I've started weeding that, but I'm not quite ready to show you that. It's pretty weedy. This is the second succession of saponaria. I started harvesting out here, but really all of this could be harvested since it's starting to bloom. So these were started in plug trays and looked pretty awful, but they're plenty tall to use. This is the third succession here by the cat, and I'll be interested to see with these hot days if that gets tall enough for me. Just a couple mahogany splendor hibiscus out here where Kitty is. I have 5 or so more scattered throughout the landscape to fill in gaps this year. But I'm guessing these 2 are probably going to be enough for what I use it for. And then the first tarped off area here, I'm going to put in, I'm going to direct sow amaranth. I think that should be ready to go. This larger space, we're just going to do rows of sunflowers. You can see the first row is probably going to bloom about the time the stuff in the hoop house does. But then I have had trouble with rabbits or squirrels or something coming through and snipping off the tops of the sunflowers. So the first couple successions look good, but then they ate almost everything in the second one. So I put down this netting, and it does look like, let me see. Yeah, you can see it coming up. I don't know if you guys can see those little seedlings under the tarp. So we're going to leave that on for a little bit. I think they'll continue to grow and push up. If not, I will just put some hoops under there. And then lastly, the garden box that I'm really most excited about for future years is my greenery reseeder garden box. So in here we have the Dyer's chamomile. I would eventually like to have full rows of everything. You can see a little bit of weeds there where I don't have anything planted. I need to probably tarp that area too. I've harvested a little bit off of this. You can use this as green before it flowers, but then the flowers are sweet. And if you don't have any insects like this one right here, it's kind of gone over. But as these leaves fall off, hi Kitty, you can use just that little yellow pop in your bouquets. So I really enjoy this plant. It's going to come back as well as reseed. Anise hyssop, you guys have seen me using this as greenery for a couple months now. There's a couple weeds in there I need to get at. Oh yeah, and some thistle. So I need to put in some work out in this garden bed too. Story of my life. This is Sweet Annie here. Now I didn't grow this last year and I missed it. So these are plugs. I also tried to direct sow some, which didn't work out real great. So I will, in the fall, make sure I have a clean bed here and let this go to seed and really spread it heavy and see if I can get a full row here. I stuck in some chamomile down there, but I would like to have a full row of chamomile and then a few other things. And I'm not sure exactly what that'll be yet, but we're just trying to get the weeds knocked back here at this point. So lots of tarping. I'm thankful for the rain, but that does bring on the weeds. And I have just gotten a little bit overwhelmed with weeds this year. I guess what I was saying before is last year, maybe in April, May, I just came out like gangbusters, weeding until 9 p.m. at night, putting in 4 hours after I had already worked my full-time job. And I had some injuries from that, and I still am dealing a little bit with painful shoulders. So this year, I am forcing a slower pace. And as a type A person, that isn't my natural tendency, but I also don't want to be in pain or be laid up. So while the weeds bug me, I know I will get to them. And honestly, if I don't get to them, I can tarp everything. Really, I need to get to the dahlias and to the reseeder row and the perennials, those that are going to be around. But things like this box, which is all annuals, I'm going to keep it pretty tidy, but eventually it will get tarped. So if I need to just knock back the weeds with the hedge trimmer or the weed whacker, that's a possibility. I hope this was helpful for you. I haven't put it together yet, but I'm guessing that it's going to be a little bit on the long side. But hopefully it was entertaining, and hopefully it gave you some tips as to, if you are in a zone close to me, what could be blooming this time of year to put together some beautiful bouquets. And also that you took from this to give yourself a little bit of grace if you have some weeds too. Most of us do, and we're just doing the best we can, and we're trying to balance enjoying our garden with keeping it tidy. All right, Tiger needs some attention. I will see you guys next time.